You're 3 rows into a field that has to be cut today, and the screen on your $500,000 tractor lights up with a code you can't clear. The machine just stops. Not because something snapped, because somewhere a line of software decided you need a dealer. That's the exact moment I learned I didn't own my tractor. I was renting it, and I'd already paid in full. All across this country, farmers like me are walking away from the green paint we grew up trusting. We're buying 40-year-old iron and European machines instead. And we're doing it because we finally figured out something they never wanted us to say out loud. The new tractors were never really ours. I lived this. I'm not reading it off a screen in some city office. I got grounded in my own field outside Cedar Falls on a Saturday in October with rain coming Monday and a combine that wouldn't throw the code, and I paid for that lesson the hard way. Before we're done, I'll walk you through a memorandum that was signed on January 8th, 2023 that was supposed to set every one of us free, and I'll show you exactly why it didn't. Then I'll hand you the real way out, the one buried in a law most farmers have never heard of. And if you're sitting on a lockdown machine right now, thinking this video is only for the guy shopping for his next tractor, stay with me. The most important part is built for you. Let me take you back to that Saturday, because that's where the whole thing started for me. The combine was a late model green machine, the kind with a big touch screen that the salesman bragged would change my life. The header plugged, which happens that's farming. I cleared it by hand like I've done 1,000 times since I was a kid riding with my father. But when I climbed back up, the display was throwing a fault, and the engine had dropped into what they call limp mode, reduced power, crawling speed. A machine worth more than my first house turned into a lawn ornament by a sensor reading I wasn't allowed to see. I did what you'd do. I called the dealer, closed till Monday. I called the after-hours line, and a man told me a technician could come out, but the soonest was Tuesday, and the trip charge alone would run me a few $100s before he touched a bolt. I stood in that field and watched the clouds build, and I did the math on what a 2-day delay costs when the moisture's right and the rain's coming. That number was in the thousands, not for parts, for waiting. Here's the part that still makes my jaw tight. The fix was nothing. When the tech finally came, he plugged in a laptop, tapped a few times, and cleared the code. 90 seconds. The sensor was fine. The machine was fine. The only thing standing between me and my own harvest was a piece of software called a diagnostic tool that he was allowed to have, and I was not. He even said it, half apologizing. Wish I could just leave this with you. He couldn't. That laptop was the whole game. That tool has a name. John Deere calls it Service Advisor. It's the software that reads the deep codes, calibrates the controllers, and turns off the limp mode that strangles your engine. For decades, a farmer could fix his own machine with a wrench, a manual, and stubbornness. But somewhere along the line, the wrench stopped being enough. The new machines run on controllers and electronic control units, dozens of little computers talking to each other, and when one of them throws a flag, only the dealer's software can pull the flag back down. And I want you to sit with what that means. It means the repair isn't mechanical anymore. It's permission. You can have the part in your hand, the skill in your hands, the machine in your shop, and still be locked out because the company kept the key. That's not a tractor, that's a subscription with tires. So I started digging the way you do when you get burned and you can't let it go. And the first thing I found told me I wasn't crazy and I wasn't alone. A research group called the U.S. Public Interest Research Group put real numbers on this. In a report they titled Deer in Headlights, they estimated that repair restrictions on farm equipment cost American farmers and the broader economy a fortune in lost time and inflated bills every single year. They documented what I already knew in my gut, that farmers were paying dealer rates for fixes they used to do themselves, and losing days they couldn't afford in the one window a year that actually pays the mortgage. But the number that stopped me cold was about downtime. When your equipment goes down in the narrow harvest window, every hour bleeds money. Researchers at land-grant universities have pegged the cost of harvest delays at hundreds of dollars an acre on a bad break and on a big operation that scales into the tens of thousands fast. The company didn't invent the weather, But they did build a machine that could be shut off by a code, and then they kept the only tool that turns the code off. They turned my emergency into their appointment. Therefore, I had to ask the obvious question: why would a company do this on purpose? And the answer is the thing that turned my frustration into something colder. It's the money after the sale. Selling you a tractor is one paycheck. Owning your repairs for the next 20 years is an income stream. Parts, labor, software calibrations, mandatory dealer visits. That's revenue that never stops, as long as you can never go anywhere else. And you can't go anywhere else if the only people with the tool are the people who sell the paint. Independent mechanics, the ones who used to keep small towns running, got locked out right alongside us. The local fix-it man, who'd been pulling farmers out of trouble for 30 years, suddenly couldn't touch the new machines because he couldn't buy the software either. That's when this stopped being about one bad Saturday and started being about a system. Someone profited from my trust, and the more I pulled the thread, the more I saw how carefully the whole thing was stitched. Look at what happened in Ukraine, because it proves the point better than any brochure ever could. When Russian forces rolled in early in 2022, there were reports of stolen John Deere equipment hauled hundreds of miles back across the border. Combines worth hundreds of thousands of dollars, gone. And then those machines just stopped working. The company was able to remotely disable them. The thieves ended up with very expensive paperweights they couldn't move and couldn't operate. Now, a lot of folks cheered that, and I get it. But I want you to really think about what it revealed. It confirmed in front of the whole world that the manufacturer can reach into a machine sitting on another continent and shut it down. That's not a theory anymore. That's a demonstrated capability. And if they can do it to a tank thief in Ukraine, the on-off switch exists for the tractor sitting in your shed too. You just have to trust they'll never flip it on you. I'm not built to trust like that. Not with my livelihood. So the trap was real, and it was deliberate, and it had teeth. The question that kept me up was whether anybody with real power was going to do anything about it. And for a while, it looked like the answer was yes. In May of 2021, the Federal Trade Commission released a report to Congress called Nixing the Fix, and it was blunt in a way government reports almost never are. It found that manufacturers' repair restrictions were not actually justified by safety or security in most cases, and that those restrictions fell hardest on people who could least afford them. Then, 2 months later, the Commission voted unanimously 5-0 to step up enforcement against illegal repair restrictions. 5 commissioners, no dissent. That doesn't happen all much in this country. The federal government looked at what was being done to us and called it what it was. And there's more. Farmers and their lawyers started filing suit. A wave of cases got pulled together into multi-district litigation in federal court in the Northern District of Illinois, accusing the company of running an illegal repair monopoly, of using that diagnostic software to force farmers into dealer service and choke out competition. The judge let key parts of those antitrust claims move forward instead of throwing them out. That means a federal court looked at the evidence and decided it was serious enough to keep going. This wasn't a few cranks on a forum. This was the legal system saying there might be a real crime here. So I had hope. I genuinely did. Because while all this was happening in the courts and the agencies, the company sat down with the biggest farm group in the country and signed something. On January 8, 2023, at the American Farm Bureau Federation's convention, John Deere signed a Memorandum of Understanding, a formal agreement, and the press around it was glowing. Farmers would finally get access to the tools, the manuals, the diagnostic information. The right to repair fight was over, they said. We'd won. The Farm Bureau president shook hands and smiled for the cameras, and a lot of good people exhaled and figured the worst was behind us. I wanted to believe it, but I read the thing, and therefore I have to tell you the truth about what that memorandum actually was, because this is where the villain stops hiding. That memorandum was not a law. It was a handshake. It had no teeth. Buried in the language was a line that the Farm Bureau agreed to refrain from introducing, promoting, or supporting right to repair legislation. Read that again. In exchange for a voluntary promise, the largest farm organization in America agreed to back off pushing for actual laws that would force the company to behave. They got a press release. The company got a shield against the one thing that could really make them comply legislation with consequences. And a voluntary promise you can walk back is not freedom. It's a leash with a longer rope. Repair advocates said it plainly at the time. The agreement didn't give farmers the right to fully fix their own machines, didn't cover the deepest software functions, and had no real enforcement if the company just dragged its feet. They wrote the terms. And then they got the people who were supposed to fight for us to bless those terms and call off the dogs. That's the part that should make your blood run hot. The fox didn't just get into the hen house. The fox got the farmer to sign a paper saying he'd stop building fences. Now, I know exactly what some of you are thinking right now, because I thought it too, sitting at my kitchen table reading all this. You're thinking, that's fine for the guy buying his next tractor, but I already own one of these machines. I'm already locked in. I can't afford to go buy 40-year-old iron just to feel free. This whole story is just rubbing salt in it. I hear you. So this next part is for you specifically, the man or woman who's already got a green machine in the shed with a screen that owns you. Don't go anywhere, because there are things you can do this week that put real power back in your hands, and nobody at the dealership is going to volunteer them. First thing, you can buy the diagnostic software. For years, the most useful version of Service Advisor, the dealer-level tool, has been quietly available through the company's own customer portal in a customer edition and through equipment communities that sell the kits to run it on a laptop. Pair it with the right adapter cable that plugs into your machine's diagnostic port, and you can read the codes yourself, see what's actually wrong instead of guessing, and clear a whole lot of the nuisance faults that used to mean a mandatory dealer trip. The dealer never points you to this. Why would they? But it exists, and farmers are running it on cheap laptops in their shops right now. Second thing, get the actual technical manuals, not the cartoon owner's pamphlet that came in the cab. The detailed service and repair manuals, the ones the technicians use with the diagnostic procedures and the wiring diagrams, can be bought or downloaded, and they turn a mystery fault into a step-by-step fix. When you own the documentation, you stop being at the mercy of a man with a laptop and a trip charge. Third thing, and this one matters more than people realize, document every forced dealer visit. Keep the invoices. Write down the downtime, the trip charges, the calibration fees, the time you waited, because that paper trail is exactly what fed the federal cases and the state laws, and it's exactly what gives the regulators ammunition. You can file a complaint with the Federal Trade Commission directly, online, for free, describing how a repair restriction cost you. Every complaint is a data point. The Nixing the Fix report happened because farmers spoke up. The next one happens the same way. Fourth, find the independent shops and the online communities that have already cracked these problems. There are forums where farmers trade the exact procedure to clear the exact code on the exact model you run, where guys post the cable they used and the steps that worked. You are not the first person to hit your problem. Somebody already solved it and wrote it down. The dealer wants you to feel alone with your broken machine. You're not. Those 4 steps won't make every problem disappear, but they move you from helpless to dangerous, and that's the whole point. Because once you know you can read your own codes and fix your own iron, the spell breaks. You stop being afraid of the screen. And once you're not afraid of the screen, you start asking a bigger question. If you want all of this laid out in one place, the history, the legal tools, the practical steps, and the full story of how the trap was built and how farmers are escaping it, I wrote it down in a book called Fixed or Owned. It's also been published under the title Break the Lock, and the information inside covers everything from the Colorado law to the exact approach for buying your way into machines that answer to you and nobody else. You can find the details in the description. It exists because I got tired of watching good farmers feel powerless over iron they'd already paid for, and I wanted every one of them to have the full picture in their hands. Now, back to that bigger question, because the answer is, what's driving the quiet rebellion I promised you at the start? And it's showing up in the one place that never lies the auction block. Go to a farm equipment auction right now and watch what happens when an older tractor rolls across. I'm talking about the mechanical machines from the late 1970s and the early 80s. The John Deere 440, built from 1978 to 1982. The simple, tough, pre-computer iron. Those tractors are selling for more than they cost new. Not adjusted for inflation more in real terms in a lot of cases, with clean examples pulling in figures that would shock you, sometimes north of what a decent used car costs, and the best ones climbing far higher. Why would a 45-year-old tractor outsell newer ones? Because there's no software to lock you out, no emissions controller to throw you into limp mode, no diagnostic tool you have to beg for. You can fix it in your own shop with your own hands and parts you can buy anywhere. Farmers are voting with their money, and they're voting for machines that can't be shut off from a corporate office. The market figured out what the brochures won't admit, that the right to repair is worth real money, and farmers will pay a premium to buy it back. But you can't run 1,000 acres on antique iron alone, and that brings me to the other half of the escape, the European machines. Here's something most American farmers never got told. In Europe, the repair culture is different, and the equipment reflects it. Brands like Kubota out of Japan and the European makers built reputations on machines that working people could service. Now, I'll be straight with you. Emissions rules and electronics are creeping into everything sold new on every continent, and no modern machine is completely simple anymore. Don't let anyone sell you a fantasy. But the difference in philosophy is real, and the difference in dealer behavior is real, and a lot of farmers I know who switched will tell you the relationship feels less like a hostage situation. And there's a strategy underneath the switch that's smarter than just picking a color. The farmers escaping the trap aren't only changing brands, they're changing eras and changing the way they buy. They're targeting the sweet spot machines built after the truly ancient stuff, but before the heavy software locks really clamped down. They're buying good used equipment from independent dealers who'll actually support a repair. They're keeping a couple of older mechanical workhorses for the jobs that don't need a computer. They're building a fleet that can't all be grounded by one company on one bad Saturday. That's not nostalgia. That's resilience. That's a man who got burned once making sure it can't happen again. So that's the lay of the land. The trap is real. The law moved and then got talked into a handshake, and farmers are escaping into old iron and independent dealers. But I told you at the very beginning there was a way out buried in fine print, something simple enough to act on this week, something most farmers have never heard laid out plain. This is it. This is the door. On April 25th, 2023, the governor of Colorado signed House Bill 23-1011 into law, the Consumer Right to Repair Agricultural Equipment Act, the first law of its kind in the entire United States. And it took effect on January 1st, 2024. This is the thing the voluntary memorandum was designed to prevent, an actual law with actual force. Here is what that law does, and why it changes the math for every farmer in America, not just the ones in Colorado. It requires the manufacturer to provide owners and independent repair shops with the parts, the tools, the software, the documentation, and the diagnostic capability needed to fix agricultural equipment on fair and reasonable terms. Not a handshake, not a press release. A legal obligation, enforceable, with the state's consumer protection muscle behind it. And now think like the company has to think. They are not going to build one tractor for Colorado and a different lockdown tractor for the rest of us. It does not work that way. When one state forces them to make the tools and the software and the manuals available, that capability has to exist, and the door it opens does not slam shut at the state line. Colorado cracked it for everybody. And other states saw it work and started moving. More right-to-repair bills covering farm equipment have been introduced across the country since, building on exactly that Colorado language, because now there's a template that survived the lobbying and got signed. So here's your move, the simple one, the one you can start this week. Learn the Colorado standard, because it is now the benchmark for what fair and reasonable access is supposed to look like, and you use it as your measuring stick. When you ask your dealer for the diagnostic software, the manual, the part, and they give you the runaround, you are no longer just an angry customer they can wait out. You are pointing at a signed law that says owners are entitled to exactly that access. You buy the customer edition of the diagnostic tool, you get the real service manuals. You support and you ask your own state representative about the bill in your state house because they are being introduced right now, and they pass when farmers show up, and the lobbyists are the only ones in the room when farmers don't. This is the hero's journey of the whole right to repair fight, and I want you to see it clearly. The way out always existed. It's our equipment. It's our right to fix what we own. That's the most American idea there is. But it got buried deliberately under software locks and a memorandum designed to make us stop asking, and a handful of people refused to let it die. A few stubborn farmers, a few repair advocates, a state legislature in Colorado that wouldn't take the handshake. They kept the door alive, and now you can walk through it. The escape from the labyrinth isn't a secret cable or a magic forum, though those help. The real exit is this: they need you to believe you have no rights, and the law now says you do. The moment you stop believing the lie, the trap loses its grip. I started in a wet field with a machine I wasn't allowed to fix, feeling about as small and as cheated as a grown man can feel. I'm telling you from the other side of it, that feeling was a choice they made for me, and taking it back was a choice I made for myself. You can read your own codes, you can fix your own iron, you can buy machines that answer to you, and you can stand on a law with your name's interest written into it. That's not rebellion. That's just ownership, the way it always should have been. You are the kind of person who refuses to rent what you already bought and paid for. You come from people who fixed what broke, who kept iron running for 40 years on grit and a good manual, who never once needed permission to work their own ground. That hasn't changed. They just spent a lot of money trying to make you forget it. Now I want to hear from you, and I mean this. Don't just nod and scroll on. Tell me in the comments about your worst forced dealer visit. What machine was it? What was the code or the part? And what did they charge you to clear something you could have fixed yourself in 10 minutes? Name the tractor and name the number. I read these, and so do thousands of other owners who think they're the only one it happened to. And tell me where you're watching from, because I want to see how far this thing really reaches. If you're done being shut off from iron you own outright, this is the place to be. Subscribe and stand with the owners taking their machines back, because this is a movement now, not a complaint. Next time, I'm going to break down exactly which model years across the major brands hit that sweet spot old enough to escape the worst software locks, new enough to do real work so you can buy your way free with your eyes open. Don't miss it. Your independence is worth more than their convenience, and it always was. I just showed you what that lockout cost me. But there's a whole next layer I couldn't fit here. Inside the circle, I lay out the lock tractor's full repair playbook, step by step, right where this video stopped. And in there you can ask me your own question and I answer you myself. No bot, just folks like you, all in one place figuring this out together. Point your phone's camera at the code on the screen. Cancel anytime. One click.